In this lesson, we're going to go over the measurement period for business combinations. If you look back at the business combinations that we've done so far, you'll notice that we said fair value a lot. Here's the thing about fair value. The parent's got to figure out the fair value numbers, and sometimes it takes a while. It may take so long that the parent doesn't know all the fair values by the time it has to report the business combination. And that's okay, as long as we figure it out within 1 year of the acquisition date. That's the maximum measurement period, 1 year. With that in mind, let's get into the details. So far, we've gone over the business combination and the consolidation immediately afterwards. A repeating theme has been acquisition date fair value. Once parent acquires control over the subsidiary, when it consolidates, the parent marks to market all of the sub's assets and liabilities as of the acquisition date, because that's what the parent acquired, sub's assets and liabilities on the acquisition date. Parent doesn't care about sub's historical costs from 100 years ago. Well, to market, we need to know the fair values, and sometimes we just don't know the fair values in time to report the acquisition. In that case, the parent plugs in provisional amounts and then makes any adjustments during the measurement period, which is a maximum of 1 year from the acquisition date. Now here's the tricky part. New information can only be used if it affects the acquisition date fair value. If the new information tells you something about the fair value after the acquisition, then it doesn't count. For example, Sub owns a huge office building in Manhattan. Parent acquires Sub on January 1. The parent couldn't figure out the fair value of the building in time to report the business combination. The parent does its best and plugs in provisional amounts for the time being. Now the parent has 1 year from the acquisition date to figure out the fair value of the building. On February 1, 1 month after the acquisition, Sub's Midtown Manhattan building burns down. Don't worry, no one was hurt. But there's no more building. Does this affect the building's acquisition date fair value? No. Parent is trying to determine the building's fair value as of January 1, the acquisition date. The fire does not speak to the building's January 1 fair value. Now let's change it up and say that there was no fire. Instead, on March 1st, the parent discovered that the murals in the building's library that were there for 100 years were painted by Van Gogh. Everyone loves Van Gogh. Because of these Van Gogh murals, the building is worth an additional $10 million. This new information affects the fair value of the building as of January 1, the acquisition date. This is different from a February fire that did not affect the fair value as of January 1, the acquisition date. We have to adjust the acquisition date fair value by $10 million. Let's talk about the length of the measurement period. We know the maximum measurement period is 1 year from the acquisition date. However, it can be shorter if parent determines that it either has all the information it needs to figure out the acquisition date fair value, or that there's no more helpful information out there. If that happens, either of those dates becomes the end of the measurement period. Once the measurement period has ended, the only adjustments to the business combination should be to correct for errors. Now let's look at the mechanics of any adjustments, the journal entries. In our previous example, subsidiary owned a Manhattan building with murals by Van Gogh. We said that we needed to increase the provisional fair value by $10 million. Building is an asset and it's increasing by $10 million. That's a debit. What's the other side of the entry? These adjustments get offset to goodwill. Just to summarize, the measurement period is the adjustment period after the business combination. When do we care about the measurement period? If you don't know the fair values in the business combination by the time you have to report the acquisition, plug in provisional amounts and make adjustments during the measurement period. Now, what information leads to an adjustment? New information that affects the acquisition date fair value. Information on fair values after the acquisition date may get reported, but it will be recorded outside of the business combination. How long is the measurement period? The measurement period starts after the business combination and ends when one of the following happens. The parent has enough information to figure out the fair value, or there's no other information out there that will help figure out fair value. Or you get to the maximum time allowed, 1 year from the acquisition date. What are the mechanics of any adjustments? You increase or decrease the asset and liability, and the other side of the entry is typically to goodwill. I know that's a lot of detail, but knowing the details will really put you over the top to passing. Next up, we'll finish up business combinations with some additional issues like direct expenses, contingent consideration, and pushdown accounting. You want to make sure to rack up these points on the exam. So don't go away. I'm Liz Cho with Test Prep in a Snap.